Yo, it is Mayo back again with another video, and today we're going to be looking at devil fruits, specifically old devil fruits, like from the beginning of the story. So we're going to look at the first devil fruit that isn't Luffy's, because that'll take a while. So today we're going to be looking at the Bara-Bara no Mi, or the Chop fruit, from the second devil fruit revealed in the story, and its owner is Buggy D Clown. What a guy. But basically, the Chop fruit is a paramecia devil fruit that only has a single capability that we know of, and it even has a disadvantage. It's not the most useful fruit that we've seen, but I feel like it could have more applications if it was used in other ways besides the way that Bucky uses it. And basically, the Chop fruit works that he can separate his limbs, and that's pretty much it. He can separate them like from normal sizes, like just detach his arm or something, detach his arms and legs into multiple sections, all that other stuff, or he could be cut into fine pieces, like very thin pieces, like as we saw in Marineford when Dracula, Hawkeye, Mihawk cut up Buggy, and Buggy was basically just a bunch of strings. He looked like spaghetti, and that's basically the only main way that the fruit can be used. But that also makes it pretty OP because it could go up against someone that is probably on the level of a Yonko, or possibly even stronger, because Mihawk is probably stronger than Shanks now that Shanks has lost his arm, even though we don't know that because we haven't really seen Shanks fight like at all in the story, like ever basically. So still kind of up to debate, but Buggy's fruit, it's not really like determined by the opponent he's fighting, because he could just get cut up several times. It doesn't really matter who his opponent is, but that's just the basic use of the fruit, and I'll cut it up and his body won't be affected in any way. So it's not like he chooses this either, like nothing can really cut him, but besides if like it's just a regular slash, like he can be cut by regular slashes, but if they cut all the way through the limb, it's going to be completely fine, and he'll be completely fine, and just physically, even if his body is just separated so he's not like bleeding out or anything. And one other thing about the fruit that we've seen, which is its main disadvantage, is that he needs to keep his feet on the ground, and he can still like walk around, or it might be easier to have somebody carry his feet like we saw with Luffy. And so his feet have to be grounded, and he also works like it has to be within a certain radius, and I think it's around 30 feet for his devil fruit. And basically that's how far he can stretch the limbs that he is separated from his body. And if he did something like what happened in Marineford, where he was cut up into several smaller pieces, then it's possible that he could use like parts of his body to wrap around other people within a certain space, which could be one of the ways that it could be used in a more useful way than we've already seen. But the way that his devil fruit works is that he can either just separate his detached limbs like regular, and they can just kind of pop off, or he can like control them and make them float and like shoot them out. So as we saw back in Orange Town when he was first introduced, we saw him fight Luffy by holding knives in between his fingers and then shooting them out like he would any other weapon. So it's a lot more useful of a technique because it allows him to use more range attacks, and he can use his limbs in a more useful way besides them just kind of floating around. And they're still like his regular limbs, and they're not very strong, so unless he got hockey, it would be a lot more useless versus something that we saw, which is kind of like the evolved version of Buggy's Chop fruit, which was very good, the Marine Vice Admiral, who could separate his limbs into ball-like shapes. But the thing is, they were like harder than regular skin. So Buggy was actually at a lot more of a disadvantage when it comes to his actual ability. And there's also the obvious thing of that, like, every user of a devil fruit uses it in a different way, even though the different users that we've seen of certain fruits are kind of more similar in how they use them, because we've seen examples like Sapo, who was also obviously carrying on Ace's will, so he was very similar in the way that he used his attacks, but he also incorporated his own like abilities and such. So it just goes to show that the user can apply their devil fruit in different ways depending on their own past techniques and things that they've learned, and apply it to how they fight with their devil fruit. But with someone like Buggy, it was obviously like one of the first examples we've seen of a devil fruit. So I feel like Oda was trying to figure out like how devil fruits are gonna work like for the future of the story, and it was kind of just like more of a tester. So it's not like the most useful ability we've seen, but after the time skip, Buggy starts using it in a more useful way, where he takes basically like a large tarp-like thing and then stretches out his limbs to make himself seem more intimidating, which works perfectly for Buggy and just what he's like, because we obviously know because Buggy is a flamboyant man, as we've seen, and obviously we've seen him like all the time just doing things that are like strange, and especially just like because of his character design and just obvious like big clown nose and all the other things that make him like very unique in his design and everything else. And then of course you don't mess with things like his clown nose, because of course he'll get mad. And with a character like Buggy and his flamboyancy, that obviously ends up being incorporated into the way that he fights and all the other stuff. And it also goes along with how he's like more like post-time skip, where he's doing things with more like a view of intimidation and trying to intimidate his opponent. So it just makes sense for Buggy's character overall. And so in that case, he can make up what he lacks for in physical power with actual like monkey balls and other sorts of attacks, versus someone like Luffy, where a bunch of superhuman feats over the story, and a bunch of other characters. And I don't even think that Buggy is like that much taller or anything than any other person in the story, because we've obviously seen like a bunch of different characters that are like way larger than regular humans, and that's partially to make a difference between Luffy and like the main antagonist that he's facing, because obviously the main antagonist has to be like a big strong opponent that they're like kind of trying to build up, while Luffy's like this at least regular guy in size, but he has like the courage and power and everything else to back it up and eventually take down the villain at hand. So it just kind of goes to show that someone like Buggy, he needs alternatives with like the Muggy Ball, and the Muggy Ball is obviously kind of connected to how he originally uses Devil Fruit, where he was kind of shooting it off with the knives. So it's kind of like a cannonball. So it's kind of like the same idea, which also applies to his pirate thing and not just his clown thing. I feel like his clown thing hasn't really been explored. Besides that, like, he had the rest of his crew, which were a lot more circus-like, but then he himself was not very clown-like besides his nose and then just like the way he acted in the beginning of the story. But I feel like he, as now a warlord, is a lot more serious in the way he acts and is more like demanding, because he knows that obviously he has like a larger crew to command, but he's still like the same Buggy in the way that he like acts, which is like still nice, because we all love Buggy. If you hate Buggy, there's probably something wrong with you or your attitude. So he's a great man. Appreciate that, man. And that's pretty much it for the video. If you liked, please do like, comment, subscribe. And the thing is, if you subscribe to the channel, then leave a comment and I will do a video on whatever you want, and I will upload it the day after you comment that. So please do get on that. Do not sleep on that. I will do it. I have done it already. I did something that I didn't want to. I had to watch Goose Goose again, which was like this chaotic clip. You just watch the video if you want more of an explanation. But Yeah, that's it. Bye.